Hi, welcome to another day of art. Today we're going to do more Chinese brush painting, but now we get to do a complete scene, a traditional scene using bamboo branches, leaves, and adding plum blossoms to a tree trunk or branches. So I'm going to show you, you should have received your box of goodies, and I just want to make sure you've got the right supplies for today. You should also have access to our schedule if you want to download those and print it out or just look at it on your screen. We are on day 3, bamboo, branches, and blossoms painting. And you'll see in each day there's going to be a supply list at the end of that lesson so you know exactly what supplies you need. And I'm going to go over that today too. In your box you should also have a packet that looks like this. And they are in the order that we will use them. So we're past the calligraphy section now. The next section you should see these printables with the plum blossoms. And if you didn't get the printables, they should be in the Google Drive. You can access them there and you can print them out if you have access to a printer. So there are 3 sheets with plum blossoms that you can use for examples today. And I'm sorry I didn't get all of the printables to you on time, so I'm going to show you some other examples in the demo as well. So also, you will need your paper plate, so you just need one today for your paints, and then a clear cup for your water. I used a yogurt container before. And then you will need a Sharpie. You're going to need your Sumi ink. Your toothpick. Now I did that in the last video. I showed you how to do the toothpick tree with the plum blossoms. So I kind of went ahead of myself there, but if you want to do that today, make sure you have access to your toothpicks. And then the postcard paper, we've got cards actually, so they're watercolor cards instead of postcards. And then your watercolor set, so you'll need those today. And then your rice paper or sketch paper. That should look something like this, or if you have a practice pad, you can use that, or any kind of sketch paper would work too. But this is the size we want to use for the final composition or final scene of our artwork today. So I'm going to go ahead and get this set up, and we're going to get started with using our, oh, don't forget, one of the most important is your bamboo brush. So make sure you have that ready as well, and then we'll get started with the first lesson. I want to show you an example of the toothpick art from the last video. This was done with the toothpicks for the plum blossom, so just to show you how rough they can be, and you can water it down. But the main thing I want to show you in the video today is doing the bamboo and branches and making a scene with the bamboo and then making one with the plum blossoms. This is an example. I did not paint this, but I wanted to show you what a professional one looked like on this traditional rice paper of Chinese characters with the Chinese chops. So that is just an example of a finished one that would work for a Chinese scroll, which we will do later. I'm going to start with the practice pad today, starting with bamboo stalks to do something like these practice sheets. And the first thing we're going to start with is just doing stalks by doing horizontal brush marks using different parts of the brushes. So I've got my brush and I'm just going to dip it in water, and I'm using my practice pad. And I want to start with trying to use most of the length of the brush here to do a horizontal mark. This would be for the bamboo stalk. I need to soften. You may need to soften your brush a bit if it's the first time to use it. And then I just lift it up. So I see how I use the whole side of the brush and lift up, and mainly just focus on using the length of the brush. So I wouldn't worry so much about the other two right now. And it's okay if there's gaps in there, because that just brings out the natural beauty and lines in the bamboo. And then you can practice doing leaves and nodes. So we're actually going to go to the nodes first. And you can also practice doing the bamboo stalks up and down. And notice how they look like bone. So they look like pieces of bone. Then I'm going to leave a gap and do another one and lift up. And you want to put the nodes in where the gaps are. So say I've got these gaps in between the stalk here, and then we can practice doing the nodes, which is, and I'm going to do it on the side here first. So you lay your brush down, okay, then use the tip and then give it a hook, and then you can also curve them up more or curve them down more, depending on where you are on the stalk. So on the top one, let's say my eye level is more in the center of the stalk here for the top one. I'm going to curve it slightly. Then the center one, I want it pretty much at the center. And the bottom one, my curve is going to go down more. So because we want the eye level one to be the most even, the top one curves up, the bottom one curves down slightly. So you can just kind of practice that on your practice sheet. You can also do double nodes if you wanted to. So you can do single or double. You can make your stalks, practice making them thinner, so you can adjust from thick to thin. Maybe you want some thinner ones behind it. And then you can practice some leaf strokes. And I'm going to practice holding my brush. I'm just going to turn my practice sheet like this so you can see. So you can see how I'm going to hold my brush steady and straight, and I want to mimic that shape of the bamboo brush bristle so that it tapers. So I'm laying it down and then I'm tapering it off, and you can bend it slightly too. So you just practice making those kind of marks for your leaves. And you can just fill a row with the practice leaves. And I've got some examples. I also want to show you different directions and how to make them bend. So if I want to, I can make this one kind of bend like as if it's bending in the wind. And then this one's going to bend this way and taper off. And then this one over here, I want it to bend in the other direction. To see how I'm moving my brush and then tapering it and then laying it down more and then lifting it up. So you just kind of practice as you're making the mark, laying your brush down, lifting up for the narrower marks, laying it back down and lifting up. So it's kind of like a dance here with your brush strokes. So you can practice that. Then once you do that, you can do it on a practice sheet with the watercolor and do a row of stalks and practice horizontally first, then practice vertically. Then you can add the nodes. So here's another practice sheet. You may want to go through several practice sheets with the nodes. You can also do nodes with 2 brush marks. So I can do something like this on either side for that kind of hook look from my nodes. Here's one that's curved down, curve up, then the eye level, and you can also do 2 sides. You can do double. So here's a practice sheet with a thicker stalk, a thinner stalk with some leaves of 3, and then some nodes. Here's another practice sheet on rice paper with some leaves and with some thinner branches. So remember, if you want a thinner mark, you want to hold your brush straight to make a thinner mark for the branch. And then I can have smaller branches going off. And then leaves hang down from the branches. Okay, so then here's another practice sheet where I've practiced the thinner branches with small leaves dripping down from the branches. And then I'm starting to make a scene. So here I've got 2 stalks with branches of leaves going off. They're blowing in the wind on the right. And then I've written some things here, the character for horse, ma, and fu for blessing. So I can add some words so I can start thinking about a composition or a picture that I want to make with all the combination of those marks. Then here is one where my composition is comprised of 3 bamboo stalks with some branches and leaves of 3. And then I've added some words. So I've added the words peace and joy, ping and shila. So that's peace and that's joy. And then I've just added my mark, my signature here. My name is Kai. And so I've just written my name as a signature there. Something else you could do that might be fun. This was a student sample where they added, we added splashes of black watercolor all over. If you want to create an effect that's more expressionist, as if it's raining or storming. Here is another student sample of a tree trunk. So this one, it doesn't have to be after you've practiced bamboo. Maybe you want to do a tree scene. So this one is using the manila paper. So once you do your final scene, you can use the manila paper if you want. So my practice pad is disappearing. And I'm going to let that disappear so I can go on and do the plum blossom. So here's another practice sheet where you can see the stems with the leaves going off that you could do some scenes like that. So I'm trying to go a little quickly this time so we can get to the plum blossoms. But here are some other practice sheets. This one is with the word love that we practiced with the bamboo. These are really rough. It just helps to do several different sketches and practices before you do your final composition. So here are our plum blossoms, and if you look on the slides, you can see that you want to practice outlining the flowers first. You can outline in a wash of black, or you can use a red wash, like a light watercolor, to practice outlining the flowers in these different variations. So with like the full flower, where you can see the 5 petals, or the side view where you may only see 2 petals as a bud. So you've got this peppercorn look where it's a small bud, the crab eye, or the smiling face where you see 3 of the petals. So here are some of those examples of how you can start outlining them. And then you add the stamens and the pollen dots on top of the petals from the center. They always go out from the center of the flower. And then you can start adding them onto your branches. So you practice the branches earlier. Here's an example sheet where you can practice the different stages and variations of the buds. Here's another practice sheet where you can see the full open flower, or half closed, or completely closed. And then you add the base of it, which is the 3 sepals that are cupped at the base of the peduncle. I think that's what it's called. And so you put that at the base there. You can see the 3 pieces there at the base of the bud. And then you put it on top of a tree branch. Here's a student sample where you can see their trunk, their branches, and then their petals, the stamens, and the pollen dots. Here's some more examples of you want your trees to be windy and twisty, and that's the beauty of the bamboo brushwork. It will naturally look like that. Here is an example that I did. It's a practice with the word peace, ping an, and then my name. And then here it is on manila paper. So you can keep your main trunk pretty simple, and I watered it down so it's lighter, and then I have my branches that come out darker. And if you mess up or you have gaps that you don't like, you can just add these moss lines across those areas, and then you can add your buds on the branches. to create a simple scene. So let's go ahead and get started on our practice pads. So I'm going to practice a small bud down here. There's the base, and then I can put it on a branch there. I can even add another petal there, so very simple. And then I can go from there. I'm going to do, so this is kind of like the crab eye, and this is really watery. But then I can do, if you want to do a peppercorn one, it's really just one petal with the 3 lines at the base, and it can be rough, then putting it on a branch here. Then I can go to the smiling face one, where I've got 1 petal and then 2 on the sides. Add the base and then put it on a branch. Then I can add some different variations of that. I can have 1 petal larger than another one. Add the base there, put it on a branch. And then I can add the stamen and the pollen dots. Then I can start making my petals more open. So then I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals, and then those pollen dots on top. Because my brush is really watery, my lines are getting kind of thick here. So if you want it to be thinner, use the tip of your brush and then use less water. So here I'm going to do another one. Where you can see all 5 petals and then those pollen dots and the stamens going into the center. In this case, because it's fully open, I can't see the peduncle or like that bowl shape at the base, but I just see the stem, and then you can connect it there onto a tree branch. Then you want to start making your composition. Maybe you have just a branch coming off from the side here. Kind of draping down, and then you can add some of your flowers and buds. So that's just starting the composition, and then going from there, you can work out a complete picture, such as in these examples, and then you can add the color. So that's where I'm going to go with my watercolors. So I'm going to choose a pink color, and I can just start filling in. And you might want to leave some of the white of the paper showing for the highlights. And you want to keep it pretty watered down. You can always add more color, but you want to start with kind of a light wash. With this style, you don't need a lot of bold colors, so they're pretty light, washy colors. And you can always add accents of color later. You could even add some water first and then lay the color on top of it. And you can use some of the lighter pinks. You could just outline the petals in the pink and then go back and lay and fill in the color. Then I'm going to add some more water to make these back petals a little bit lighter. Now that you've gotten some practice, we're going to make a scene using the rice paper and the Sumi ink. And I have the practice printables of the plum blossom tree and petals laid out. I've got my watercolors and my black sumi ink. So I'm going to start with the sumi ink. I'm going to dip my brush in water. And you can use the lid if you want to thin the ink out a little bit. And make sure you get all parts of the brush. There's even an indentation where you can mix your paint in or your ink in the cap and lay your brush on it. So once I've done that, I'm going to start from the bottom and then go up. I don't want to start smack in the middle, so I'm going to go off center and start at the base of my tree trunk and lay my brush down. And if you mess up, it's okay. We can cover it up like you see I did. And I'm just going to curve up because I don't want my trunk to be perfectly straight. I want it to have some character. And so I'm just going to move up. And that's my main trunk there. And then if there's some places that I've messed up, I can make moss lines to cover it up. And that just adds character to the tree as well. So then I'm going to go back and fill in some branches. You could fill in some nodes if you wanted to. So I'm going to go here and start an offshoot. And just try to thin your branches out as you go. So your branches should get thinner and not thicker as they branch out. Then I have another offshoot. I'm going to come, I'm holding my brush straight up so I can keep it straight. Then moving up here, I'm going to make another offshoot. And here you can leave some gaps for your flowers. So I'm going to leave a gap here because I want to put a cluster of plum blossoms here. So I'm going to leave a gap and then finish this branch up at the top. So same thing, I'm going to have a branch shooting off, but I want to put a cluster or a flower there. And then I'm going to make one down here. So I'm going to have one coming off here. So I'm going to leave a gap here for a flower. And so this should go pretty quickly because you've done all the practice sheets. The key is to practice first, and then when you do the final composition, you want it to flow and be fluid and just be kind of quick. So you don't want to be too hesitant about it. And that way you can have more fun with it too. So the more you practice, that's where most of the work is going to go into. So you want it to look, the final one to look pretty effortless. I'm going to make a gap here, then finish that branch up here. Another gap. So I could add more branches, but I'm going to call that a good start now. Maybe I'm going to add some moss lines here to fill that out. Okay, then I'm going to wash my brush, or if you have another brush, you could use another brush, but I'm going to make sure I get all that black out because I'm going to outline my flower petals with the watercolor. And I'm going to switch to clean water here, and I'm going to go with a dark pink watercolor and start putting my flowers in. And what I'm going to do is outline it first and let it dry a little bit, and then I can paint them in. So I'm doing different clusters, and some of these will be the small buds that are kind of heart-shaped. We have one hanging off here. You can have some of the flowers hang upside down. Then I'm going to let it dry a little bit. And here's where it might help to even go back to the toothpick. When you're going to add the pollen stems and the dots, you could use the toothpicks to make the really thin lines. And then I can go back and make the dots with the back end of my toothpick. So that toothpick is still handy, and you'll find you can get a finer dot and line than with the brush mark. So then I can go back and do that for all of my petals, and I can go back in with a lighter pink to fill in my flowers. So you have several pinks you can choose from, different shades. You can start filling in some of the petals, and you can leave some of the white showing through. So then you can keep doing that and adding flowers if you want. Then add those pollen dots, and I'm going to go back now to my India ink to add the base, or you can use your toothpick, and you want to kind of wait till it's a little more dry, but I can add the base there to, and mine is still wet, to where the blossoms sit on the branch. And so you can just keep working with it until you have the amount of flowers that you want. And then you could add your signature or a Chinese character at the bottom of your final composition.